February 24th. En route to Istanbul, then on to Cairo. Hoping for Libya, we'll see. I'll be back soon. If anything, this trip will be a vacation. If I don't get in, I will spend time in Egypt. Photography for me was less about reporting and more about a way to view the world. And I was working on a road trip project, traveling around mostly the eastern part of China, just photographing whatever I saw. After working on that for I guess it was like a year and a half or so, I sort of realized that that the project wasn't really going in the direction that I wanted it to. Was not emotionally invested because I felt like I was such an outsider. You have to feel it, and so it comes through in the photograph. If you don't feel it, then it's not going to be there. So when I was in Beijing, I felt like I had hit rock bottom with the China project. But I was watching TV, watching CNN, and seeing this incredible movement happening. Millions of people, and just this incredible emotion.
The passion of the people of this city, of the passion of so many Libyans who have been thirsting for 42 years for this sort of opportunity, the chance to express themselves freely.
There was an identification with their struggle. That was not about being Libyan, it was not about being a foreigner. It was more like a universal fight that we can all identify with as humans. I mean, it's really all of our fight at the end of the day. That was the experience I wanted. I wanted an experience where I felt like I was alive. An experience that would be challenging for me intellectually, culturally, and physically as well. I was testing the limits of what I could do. Photography was part of it, but it was much more about wanting that experience. Certainly there was also a lot of naivety involved. Would Libya be different? Would it be a different world? Something told us so. Something would be there for us. Danger, excitement, importance, freedom, death. Perhaps all of these. I joined a few other journalists and we drove from Cairo. We arrived there at the entrance and there were a few men there. Everyone had a gun. No visas or anything. We just came right in. There was no real rules at that point. People were very open, wanting to facilitate everything for us. They were very accepting of foreigners, everybody coming in, journalists and photographers. And they just wanted as many people there as possible because they knew that they needed help, and they needed the press. So those first weeks in Benghazi in the east, it was amazing. But then quickly, within the first couple of weeks, that sort of shifted into a realization that, okay, now we're at war, We began seeing these bodies come into Benghazi and they were coming from the front line. At that point, I wasn't interested in going to the front line. I was scared. But these bodies were coming in and then people started going. So I decided, that I would go. And then once I was there, it's just sort of, you think that maybe you can handle it because there's another guy over there who's handling it. No way. I don't think I'm gonna go. Fuck that.
No, it's away. Okay.
It's like the frog in a pot of water that starts out lukewarm and like slowly heats up. The frog doesn't realize it, but it's in hot water at some point. From my experience in war, I was a part of something that was important and necessary, and that was beautiful. You feel so alive, like life has a purpose and it's very clear. And really up until that point in my life, I had never felt like my existence was as necessary in a place. I wanted to have the same experience that the men that I was photographing coming into the morgue were having. There were a handful of older photographers and journalists who had much experience working in places like that who helped me along. I learned a lot by following them around and asking questions. I had met Tim briefly before that, a couple times here in Brooklyn, but I never spent a significant amount of time around him until Libya. He sort of knew everybody and everybody knew him, and he was there to sort of work on the next stage of his life's work, really. I shared with him the work that I was doing there. He really encouraged working with the phone. I was in Benghazi at a rally. There were all these people, and basically my camera was knocked out of my hands, fell on the ground. I wanted to use something that I was comfortable with, and I've been using my iPhone a lot. So I continued with that. It matched the novelty of my being in a situation like that, but also the fact that Libyans and the citizens of the Arab Spring were also using mobile phones to photograph and make video. Sort of matched the revolution. And so Tim was more interested in a deeper, more extensive analysis of what was happening, with new ways of explaining war to people. We really connected on that level. I was seeing images that I hadn't seen before. We were seeing bodies and we were seeing gore. But I felt like it's largely hidden from the public. When we see photographs of soldiers on patrol or in tanks or shooting or bomb exploding, those aren't photographs of war. We need to see more horrific imagery of war to mobilize the public, and that's the reason why the US government has made it illegal. We never see that kind of imagery coming from the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, which is a lie. When you leave those pictures out, you lose the extremes of war. There's a sequence in the book where initially it was like a series of hands and feet that had been blown off a body and they were lying on the ground, and it was like a message from my mother where she was asking me where I am and making sure I'm okay, and then she says kisses at the end, and I had those two contrasted. From Gary Brown, subject Libya, date March 8th, 2011. Your impressions are important. Freedom, you're seeing its birth. Kind of messy. Love, Dad. Look at this. Those are the extremes that you experience. That is so surreal. When we were in Misrata, I was following photographers who were older, more experienced. So I had sort of closed off my instinct at that point. April 20th was like the other days in Libya where you just wake up early and you see what's going on and you see who's going out and where they're going. And there was a new front line that was opened on a place called Tripoli Street. That was really sketchy because the fighting was really close. It wasn't well coordinated. A lot of these guys had little to no military training. At some point, some of us ran out of film or, batteries. When we were driving back, though, I realized I probably wasn't going to go back out. I was a bit scared. I didn't really have any desire to go back out, actually. I didn't really feel like I should. Then at some point, Tim said that he was going to go back out, and another guy said that he would go, and then I began thinking about it, and I thought, okay, maybe I should go. I didn't want to miss anything. We got there, the fighting was further down the road. There were quite a few revolutionaries laying around, having a nap, just walking around. It was very strange compared to the morning. But because many of them were very comfortable walking around, we sort of felt more comfortable walking around. We went looking for these bodies that this other photographer, Guillermo, and I had photographed in the morning. So Chris and Tim could see them and photograph them. And as we were walking in that direction, there were a number of other Libyans outside, and they sort of joined us as we were walking down the street. So then, all of a sudden we were a larger group. The government forces were right on the other side of this bridge. If I ever felt uncomfortable, I would try and follow one of the fighters because I didn't have any body armor or helmet or anything. And then the first mortar fell. It was like a flash. It happened so fast. Just saw the guy in front of me just went down like. And I don't know what happened to Chris and Guy and Tim, but things aren't looking too good. I had a feeling at the house before leaving today that I shouldn't leave. I'm trying to remember the last words that Tim said. I don't know. We were all taking risks today, but we didn't have a guide. And we were walking around and the feeling didn't feel right. Oh, man. We had a talk this afternoon, me and Tim, and we were talking about photography and what it all means. We were talking about truth. We were talking about truth, This is like. What the fuck this means, man? Going back to limits, having an understanding of the limits, of what you can do. There is no limit. A lot of people died because of that realization. And I went home and I wanted to stay. My body was exhausted. I could feel the amount of adrenaline that had gone through my body every day for 8 weeks. And of course, had however much trauma from the experience.
It's kind of blurry, Michael. It's blurry video. Sid! Sid! Sid, come here!
June 10th. Tonight at dinner, I could hardly speak to my parents nor look at them. There's this haze and I don't know where it comes from. I left home and I went to visit my ex-girlfriend in Italy, Chiara. Wow. It was very peaceful and it was a time to reflect and think about what I was doing. Look at this beautiful woman before me. Ciao. Yeah. April 30th. After the bomb, when blood poured from my body, a booming voice from somewhere exclaimed, "Never again do you take stupid risks for pictures, no matter how good. Life is too precious." I just wanted to give and felt like I'd given nothing. The war was still going on, but I didn't necessarily want to be a part of it. Then in August, the revolutionaries came into Tripoli and I sort of had to go back. This could be the end. So, yeah, I went back. The first couple of days I was back, it was very difficult. I could hardly, leave the hotel. My body was, shaking. I wanted to spend more time around the effects of the fighting. I'd been pretty focused on the front line, and after a while, that looks the same. I was very curious to revisit the site and see if I could find any memory from that day, where the mortar had hit and what it looked like. And I found a few pieces of shrapnel. There was some blood in the ground in the very place where the mortar landed. It was about seeing the place again and wanting to sort of explore the memory that I brought away from that place, which was scary. And then going back and seeing it for what it was now, which was not so scary and very normal, and almost as if, what had happened a long time ago. Last day of the fighting, on October 20th, all of a sudden, the fighters all began celebrating. There was a lot of shooting going on. This guy came with a video on his phone, and he was going around to groups of the fighters and saying, "Look at this." It was a really low resolution video that showed who he said was Gaddafi. By that afternoon, they had brought Gaddafi's body into this meat locker that was kind of on the outside of the city. And they just allowed the public to come and view his body for 3 days. I was able to go into the room and view the body. It was very surreal. So this is a map and some writing that I did here on the wall in this apartment when I was making the book. That was a way for me to just sort of remember where I was in Libya and like a few of the major events that happened in the major areas that I photographed and spent time in. When you're going through a book, you're brought on a journey that's intimate because you're holding on to it and you're the only one really experiencing it. I made the book for myself as a record of what happened, and I wanted to create a space where I could put the material that I had made into and sort of capture that feeling, wrap a project and close it up and have that be there, and then you can move on. I started arranging the sequence, and it was just, okay, these are photos from a war, but why is this worthwhile as a book? Photographs were missing my experience, which was a life-changing experience that was not shown in the photographs. Books should be the way to really get into the mind of a photographer. So I just went through all the messages on my Nokia phone and my iPhone and went through all the emails and just combed through everything that might somehow work in the book. That's the contrast that exists in war. You have these extreme circumstances that are very intimate and experiences that are not intimate at all. Experiences that are very much about love and caring, and then, going to a front line where there's people killing each other. It's also sort of a catharsis in a way, just to get it out, because I was still going through a lot. I knew that there was some growth that I needed as a human. I was just looking for an experience that would get me out of the box that I was in. I needed to be a part of something. I needed to care about something. I needed to be involved in a way. Photography was my excuse, and then I went there and then I was nearly killed. Really, it was in Misrata when I realized that I had been following the camera for years in terms of making many choices in my life. Where to live, where to travel, who to work with, where to be so I can get a good picture versus where to be because I feel like I should be there. I realized that it's not about photography for me anymore. So now I put myself in front of photography. But I don't place any responsibility on myself. I don't have to do anything. I see what strikes me and what I feel strongly about, what I connect to, and I let that guide me. I've kind of really changed the way that I work. I'm trying not to think about photography, and I try and think about what I care about. Being in Libya and having those experiences brought me closer to my sense of what's important. April 1st, I've been to that place I needed to go to. It's given me confidence, more awareness, brought me closer to myself.